It is another Pittsburgh Hockey Now live chat. I am Dan Kingerski on the Pittsburgh Hockey Now and the National Hockey Now YouTube page. So we got a few things to go. I have the studio actually plugged in this time. The audio levels look good. If things aren't great, let me know. We'll fix that pretty quickly. So I'm going to tee up a couple of topics, I think, for this week, and I've written about them on Pittsburgh Hockey Now, but I think maybe you and I can talk about them too. And that is, we'll of course hit the Penguins trade talk. I put out 3 young players, 26 and under, that the Penguins could target this summer because there are FAs who maybe aren't in the best standing or the best situation with their team and could be had, perhaps, inexpensively, shall we say. Well, also, I want to talk about the Penguins core because I've been stewing on this. I did some stories back in November when there was the is Erik Karlsson fitting in, is he not sort of stuff. And I wrote about that, and I wrote about the chemistry with the core. I wrote about this or that around the chemistry or around the core. I don't think it actually all hit me until after the season when I was really just kind of ruminating on everything that was the Penguins season, trying to figure out angles to cover this offseason, trying to figure out stories I might have missed or angles or narratives that I didn't catch, right? And it began to hit me that the Penguins core really is coming to an end. Primarily, I think Evgeny Malkin is the leader in that clubhouse, obviously. Let me quick pause. We're also going to talk about Brayden Yager, and we will tee up the rest of the Penguins offseason as part of the video. Like, subscribe, do all of that beggar nonsense. Please like me so I get paid more, all of that stuff. Okay, back to the Penguins core. Oh, plus your chats, too. I can see them in real time here on StreamYard from both Facebook and Twitter and the National Hockey Now YouTube page. So it's pretty cool, actually. So fire away your questions, and I'll certainly get to them. To the Penguins core now for the third time. With Evgeny Malkin obviously facing the end sooner than later, the end of his career, I have to ask the question, why was it so important? Why is it so important that they all stick together for the end of their career? It's nice. It's nice to go to work with coworkers you trust and love and all of that. Don't we all want that? But I'm going to be honest, and it seems to me that mythical goal that doesn't really count for anything superseded what is best. Not necessarily what's best for the team, but I mean, in this case, what's best for them. Now, the Penguins need to keep Sidney Crosby. He is the standard bearer. He is the guy who's going to transition this team to the next era. He's going to show the young players. He's going to lead the young players. You don't give up that. But let me ask you, what does Chris Letang get for sticking around through losing seasons or non-playoff seasons? Is it loyalty for loyalty's sake? And I'm not answering these questions so much as I am asking them because I'm not in their skates. I'm not in their lives. And only they can. But I am asking, is it best? Is it best for the players? And I think Marc-Andre Fleury is a prime example of a player who left Pittsburgh, a core player who left Pittsburgh. He's now more popular than he ever was here. He's almost been canonized in Pittsburgh. And if you think back to his tenure, a lot of buffoons wouldn't give him the slightest ounce of credit. Jaromir Jagr is the same way. I mean, listen, I talked about this 15 years ago when Penguins fans just behaved terribly every time Yager came to town, the boos when he touched the puck. And it clearly hurt the guy because Pittsburgh was his home. By the way, I think he still keeps the house over in Mount Lebanon. That's been the chatter. Like it's complete vintage 1995, never touched. And Penguins fans just wouldn't let him go, wouldn't let him leave, even though he had to, because the Penguins really couldn't afford to pay him. Sure, they could have had Mario and Yager, and literally every other player be an AHL player. That was the Penguins' options, basically, at that point. And even then, it might not have been enough to keep Yager because he had a contract and a salary and all of that. But to my point, if Chris Letang would say go to Ottawa or, I don't know, pick another city. Let's say he went to Edmonton, the reverse Paul Coffey, right? Wins a Stanley Cup up there. The guy is going to be in the Hall of Fame, greased skids, instead of dealing with a lot of the stuff the Penguins fans toss at him. And if Evgeny Malkin wanted to be closer to family, honest to goodness, if Evgeny Malkin was like, you know what, this has been great for the last year or 2 years of my career, I'd like to be close to family, would you blame him? Or would you do that typical thing where you kicked his butt on the way out the door saying, you're terrible, get out? I think I know the answer on that one. And so I wonder, loyalty, what is it? Loyalty for loyalty's sake, what is it? And I think the Penguins core might have to have that conversation with themselves. Unless Kyle Dubas can have one of those magical summers where he just tweaks this, tweaks that, and the team somehow is dramatically different despite not giving up dramatically different pieces or, acquiring dramatically different pieces. Because if you look at the Penguins roster, the top 6 players have no trade clauses? No movement clauses? So I don't know how they make any real significant change. Oh boy, I see it. I see it coming. I saw it coming on Twitter. Is it me, or is that segment of the Penguins fan base that demands physicality out in full force right now? And the funny thing is, I was the guy leading that charge several years ago. And I was getting just flambéed, shish kebabbed, butterflied. Social media and the blogosphere, Kingerski's an old school Canadian. He doesn't know what hockey's like today. Now, everyone's like, we need physicality. There is a balance. And I see Steve Nash has a question about physicality. And Steve, I'm going to dive into that because I couldn't help myself on Twitter yesterday. Just sometimes when you poke the bear, the bear's going to take a swat at you. And I kind of just, I sat somebody down on Twitter who was like, Penguins have no physical defenseman ever. And I'm like, you mean Jack Johnson, Eric Goodbranson, Brian Dumoulin, Jack St. Ivany? Who I'm missing somebody in there. Regardless. And they're like, Brian Dumoulin isn't physical. And so I guess you already sucked me into talking about physicality before we get to Brayden Yager, Steve. In so much as being physical doesn't mean you play like a chicken with your head cut off, as did Darius Kasparaitis. It doesn't mean you have to throw thundering hits in the corner. It doesn't mean you step up at the blue line with an elbow or a shoulder like Jacob Trouba. That's one type of physical. A whole nother type of physical is keeping opponents away from your net. It's using your body to contain your opponent where they can't get away, they can't get free, they can't get space, and making it tough on them. That's a whole different kind of physical. Brian Dumoulin was that kind of physical defenseman. No, he didn't throw a whole lot of hits. Somebody even said Jack Johnson wasn't physical. I was like, wait a second. This guy had over 200 hits every season with the Penguins, at least. So there is that. And Jack St. Ivany is not going to be a guy who is just throwing thundering hits in open ice. He's not a Scott Stevens. He's not going to be Jacob Trouba. But what he is going to do, and I think he's pretty much earned a spot in the NHL. From what I saw at the end of the season, I think his deal is going to be set unless he takes the summer off or kind of just goes down the wrong path. But what St. Ivany does is uses his body, confronts forwards around the cage, keeps the goalie's eyes clear. That's a whole different kind of physical, and that's actually probably more difficult because it's a constant, never-ending battle, whereas the other is just looking for that opportune moment to drive a shoulder into somebody. I mean, don't get me wrong, it helps a team when you just lay somebody out. But those players are fewer and fewer and far between now. I mean, even Tom Wilson didn't have a big year in the physicality department, did he? Can you tell me, like, what the 3 or 4 games the Penguins and Capitals played, that Tom Wilson had much of an impact? I think there was one moment. I seem to remember a little bit of dirty stuff, but otherwise, no, not much. Jake Bacon asked, who do I think will run the power play and replace Todd Reirden? Jake, I don't know. I would have expected John Gruden out of Toronto. Is that his? Yeah. I would have expected Gruden out of Toronto, but he hasn't bit. So I don't know who they're going to bring in. The hockey universe is vast. For all I know, Kyle Dubas has somebody stored in the memory banks for the last 5 years waiting for this opportunity, kind of like he did with Jansen Harkins and John Ludwig. Just guys he had stored in his brain waiting for the chance to get them. So I'm gonna punt that one. I think from here on out, there are plenty of plus. You know what, Jake? There are still half a dozen, 7 head coaching vacancies in the NHL. So a lot of these guys who might come in to replace Todd Reirden are probably waiting to see if they get a crack at the Devils job or who else is available, right? So that's probably what's holding everything up. There's too many head coaching jobs, and those guys are waiting to see what comes next. Oh, to follow up on Steve's question about physicality, talking about Pat Maroon in the playoffs. Yeah, listen, I do think some girth in the Penguins' bottom 6 wouldn't kill them. Those players, again, how old is Pat Maroon? I mean, you just don't find many of those guys. You just don't, and they're worth their weight in gold. You actually end up paying more for them than they're worth, statistically speaking. And we know Kyle Dubas kind of builds his team statistically speaking. So until you find one who is worth his weight in gold and the statistics support that, then I think the Penguins would add one. Jagger Joshua down in Wilkes-Barre. Obviously, his brother in Vancouver has been tossing the body in that series like a madman. Yeah, you wouldn't mind seeing one of those guys. Brian, 2015, says, if all these message board Twitter GMs know it all, why would FSG not try to hire them? Oh, Brian, you're being mean. Okay, so fire away, post your questions. If anybody's ever used StreamYard before, I still haven't figured out how to share the screen. I haven't figured out how to do that yet on StreamYard. So, I guess I can't show you the highlights of Brayden Yager. I was playing with it this morning and playing around, and it was just driving me nuts. No, I'm looking here at buttons as I speak. Can't do it. So maybe if I record these and I can add the video in the software that I have and do that. I don't know. Okay, but anyway, wow, 334 live views. Hey, everybody, that might be a new record for me. 335. I don't think we've ever cleared like 200 before. So cool. These are catching on. Sound is good. Everybody happy. I don't see any complaints. Steve is glad I mentioned Joshua. Does he have an NHL future? Not yet. Just listen. He liked my shoes when I was up in Wilkes-Barre, so I have to give him some points for that. Someone bought me some custom Nikes for Christmas, and I was wearing them. They're kind of an offshoot of the original Air Jordans. And he comes walking in the locker room, nice shoes, and keeps going. I tell you that story only because it's such a different environment at the AHL level. Just the how freely I was able to interact and communicate with the guys and the honesty that they were talking with versus, at the NHL level, everyone's been coached and guarded and they see me coming a mile away and they pull out their, note card with 6 cliches and get ready to, hand me 1 or 2 of them. Having scouted the games, Steve, obviously I went up there to look at Yoel Blomqvist and Koivunen and Tristan Brose. I can't say that Joshua jumped out at me. He didn't pull my eyes away from the other guys. I'll tell you who did, though. And he's unfortunately, I think for the Penguins, a Group 6 UFA, if he asks for it, is Jack Rathbone. They got him in that Mark Friedman trade. Rathbone was banished to the AHL from the Vancouver Canucks. His game was in a horrible state of disrepair. It was even in a state of disrepair when he came to the Wilkes-Barre Penguins. But I'll tell you what, the reports I got, when I got up there, people saying, oh, watch him. He's playing really well. And I was really impressed with him in the playoffs against the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, the Flyers affiliate there in Allentown. He really he uses his edges and skates so well, and he was really moving the puck well, and getting up into the play. He deserved to be rewarded with a goal or 3 rather than, I don't think he scored. Maybe he scored 1 or got an assist, deflection sort of thing. Wilkes-Barre didn't play very well, to be honest. Anywho. But yeah, unfortunately, not yet. Of course, that was his first professional year too, Steve. So a lot can happen between your first professional year and your second. You get that time away, you reset, you really watch some film and video, you work on a couple of things that became apparent to you during the season. You show up next year and everything's different. Jake asked, do I think Owen Pickering will join the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins this coming season? I would hope so. Listen, if he doesn't, now I should preface my answer. If he doesn't, I believe him to be eligible to play in the American Hockey League next year. I haven't off the top of my head. I don't know his birthday, and I don't. He might have to go back to juniors, but no, he should be 20 this year. And so he should be eligible for Wilkes-Barre rather. And I have to tell you, Wilkes-Barre would be the best place for him. But if the Penguins send him back as an overage junior to Swift Current, oh boy. I have not been overly impressed with Owen Pickering. Just haven't. I haven't seen what I want to see from him in terms of skating, in terms of playing the body, and all of those sorts of things. I think he's still raw And I think he's still growing, quite frankly. Even if he's not growing up, he needs to grow a little out, a little horizontally. He looked a little bit different body-wise when I saw him up in Wilkes-Barre. He didn't play in those 2 games, which I thought was telling. I don't believe he was injured. He's with the team. I thought that was a little bit telling of where he might stand. So a lot of this will be decided June, July. We'll get a better look at the prospects. Last year, I think they did the prospects camp just after the draft, and they flew some guys in, and they did all of that sort of thing. When I see him in July, I'll know a whole lot more. Josh Craigle says, "Hey, Dan, I'm from Johnstown. I remember your time with the Chiefs." Yeah, that's a time ago. That was certainly a minute ago. That was my least favorite and most favorite job combined. That was a brutal slog, and I loved being with the team. I loved doing play-by-play. But yeah, living in I actually didn't live in Johnstown. I lived in Irwin, so I had an hour or 6-minute commute each way every day. I didn't fit in. There was a young office staff. They were all like 23, 24, 25. And here's me at 30 years old. A whole different life circumstance. Oh, Dave just sent me a message. I think there might be a story. Oh, a bunch of Penguins surgeries. So here, we'll break some news in real time, it looks like. No, I guess they put it on Twitter instead of sending us an email. Hang on. Let me see who had surgery. I can probably guess. Oh, I did not guess entirely correctly. Okay, Matt Nieto, Chris Letang, those 2 I would have expected. John Ludwig, yeah, okay. I'll tell you what. I have to be careful how I say this. I think it would be good. It's good news for Penguins fans that you don't see either Brian Rust or Rickard Rakell on that list. I think there were rumors that both of those guys were pretty banged up through the season. So that's probably a pretty good indication then that they were getting healthy or healthier now. Okay, Melissa Hart, how are you? Should it be the governor? Will the Pens re-sign Marcus Pettersson? I heard that he might be traded and hate that idea. I don't know. To get, you have to give. And I don't know that the Penguins have anybody else to give besides Marcus Pettersson. I know when someone talks about trade, the first thing you do is talk about his downsides, right? Well, he doesn't do this, he doesn't do that, and that's the reason you trade him. I will instead, I think we all know that Marcus wore down a little bit, really wore down last season. This season, I think he maybe began to wear towards, the very end. But otherwise, what a solid defenseman. Don't forget, for everybody who pines and cries for Daniel Sprong, in the trade for Sprong, they got Marcus Pettersson. What a win that is. Like, would you undo that? Hell no. If you would, just step away from the keyboard and don't talk hockey anymore. Please and thanks. Marcus Pettersson obviously is very sound defensively. He knows how to use the condor wingspan that he's got going. He takes away passing lanes. He knows how to body up in the defensive zone. He knows where to be. He's one of the few guys who can read and react to Erik Karlsson and Chris Letang, which is kind of unique because he didn't used to be able to play with Chris Letang. 2 years ago, they tried it, and it was an unmitigated disaster. And they're like, okay, get them apart, break them apart as fast as you could. I thought Pettersson really probably took the final step of his career this season and showing all that he could do. He's never going to score 30 points, 35 points. He's never going to score 5 or 10 goals. He's going to get you the few goals that go off somebody's noggin or off a shin pad near the net. He's going to move the puck. He still has that very good first pass. There's a lot of things he does very well. And the Penguins, in a perfect world, should keep him. We don't live in a perfect world, do we? So, I don't know if there were a star winger forward available that you thought could change your team. And I don't know, some team that lost again in the first round of the playoffs who's panicking, going to blow it up, said we want that guy as a centerpiece in a trade. You do it. And then you try to replace him and hope and kind of hope for the best. Patrick Snow, have I watched any video on Ville Koivunen? He has some high-end skill and could surprise some people and steal a spot. Well, Patrick, I did one better. If you're new to the chats, listen, I lived in Wilkes-Barre for a week. I went up and stayed in the little Motel 6, went to practice, went to the couple of AHL playoff games that the Wilkes-Barre Penguins played, specifically to get my eyes on Ville Koivunen. And listen, the highlights you see on YouTube, they don't count. And I'm not downplaying you or dismissing you. I'm saying when the player had the chance on the smaller rinks against men in the AHL playoffs, he looked he didn't keep up. He didn't compete well. He was one of the guys. He was, in the background. I will give you the blunt honest here. No, I do not expect him to steal a spot this coming fall. He'll probably look amazing in the rookie camp in July. He'll look great in the rookie camp before training camp and that, the Buffalo Prospects Challenge. He'll probably look great in those. And fans are going to get all excited, and I'm telling you now, fans are going to pound their chest and say, "Get this guy in the lineup. He's young. He's great. Yay!" But he's not yet. He didn't know how to find space. His skating, I was a little bit surprised at the lack thereof. I thought he'd be a better skater, given how highly he was touted, and the skating it wasn't working. He didn't get to pucks that I thought he should have been able to get to. He didn't get free, didn't get clear, didn't find the space to let his shot go. So, no, I went from very intrigued and interested in Koivunen to downgrading him so far as to put him in the category of now he has to show me before I'll advocate or write that he should be in the lineup again. That's honest to goodness. Check out the links on Pittsburgh Hockey Now. In fact, let me jump over. I'm going to post the PHN full scouting report here for you. Okay. There we go. Here you go, Patrick. Here is the scouting report after a couple of games. It's in the chat there for you. So you can take a look at it. Brian asked, what is Isaac Beliveau's ceiling realistically? Brian, Beliveau was one of those reach picks in the 5th round a few years ago. He showed up at his first rookie camp and, kind of knock-kneed and baby-faced. I'm like, oh, boy, what were they thinking? But he also, like Owen Pickering, had a growth spurt before his draft year, and he was still kind of coming into his body and all those sorts of things. I haven't seen much from him to put him on the NHL radar. Guys who go back and forth between Wheeling and Wilkes-Barre are not generally on the track to go from Wilkes-Barre to Pittsburgh. And I kind of see why. Of course, he could take another step here. I mean, he could. You never know with a guy who's 20, 22 years old. Click. There's that final step in physical maturity. They learn the game somehow. Everything just becomes easier. But I No, I don't think so. All right, let me try to scroll down here. Can the Penguins realistically upgrade the left side defense, or are they hoping one of Joseph or Graves can play top four? LT, did you see the last 2 months of the season? Did you see P.O. Joseph and Chris Letang? Listen, it wasn't a coincidence that when the coaches just almost out of exasperation put Joseph with Letang, everything changed. That was one of those building blocks, springboards that helped the Penguins turn the corner in the season. Too late, mind you, but I do wonder what Mike Sullivan really thinks of P.O. Joseph. I think Sullivan is still maybe a little iffy on him. I don't want to say skeptical, but I don't know if Sullivan has full faith in and confidence in P.O. Having seen what I saw, absolutely. But you do have to get something from Graves as well. If Ryan Graves doesn't bounce back, how in the hell will we get rid of his contract? Asks Bacon. You don't. I mean, with 5 years remaining at $4.5 million, he has to show something. Otherwise, you have to give up significant assets to move him, and that just ain't happening. Or the other alternative, I think I wrote several weeks ago, the other alternative is you take on a bad contract. There were a few around the league, and God help me, it's been a few weeks, and I can't remember what my research showed up in terms of who the Penguins could take back. I was looking for, Josh Anderson of Montreal was on my list. Anderson has, I think, 3 years left at $5.5 million up in Montreal, and hasn't really done the last couple of years. It's he's breaking down. That's what you're going to have to do. So pick your poison. You can jump out of the frying pan, but you're going to do a belly flop into the fryer. Ryan asked, does Corey Andonovsky get re-signed this offseason? Boy, I want to get to Brayden Yager at some point, maybe after Ryan. His offensive production went up from the previous season. He plays that gritty pest style. I was a little surprised that he wasn't called up. Yeah, he very much is in that mold, Ryan, of an Anthony Angelo. A guy who's like a 13th, 14th forward. He's never going to be an NHL regular, I don't think. And he doesn't have a lot of offense. He's not overly physical. He's not out there banging and crashing like Jagger Joshua. So, I don't know if he'll get re-signed this offseason or not. Some of that depends on the player, too. The guy can say, listen, I love you guys. I appreciate everything you've done for me. I don't see my path here. And a guy in his position, because he's not integral to the building of the team, they might just say, all right, dude, thank you, and let him go. I don't know. Those are interesting questions, but not necessarily pressing questions. All right, let's talk about Brayden Yager, the Penguins' 2023 first-round pick. And holy cow, 541 live viewers right now. Whew, that's spread over the Twitter and the YouTube, but still keep those questions coming. That's amazing. We've never had that many. Anyway, Brayden Yager, and I'm still trying to look here how I can share my screen so I can show you these highlights. If anybody knows how to do it, let me certainly let me know. What Yager is doing that should excite you, should offer you some promise and optimism, is how he's scoring goals. Now, in full disclosure, when I watch so many juniors players, even when I watch a lot of AHL players, and here's a prime example would be Alex Nylander, I always check where they're scoring the goals from, how they are scoring them. And I'm going to use Nylander as kind of the negative case study here. it seemed like every time I saw Nylander score in the AHL, there were defensemen between him and the goalie. The shots were 30 feet. They were from the perimeter. And you don't score those goals in the NHL. What I'm seeing from Brayden Yager and what Owen Pickering also plays in the WHL, a lot against Brayden Yager. What I'm seeing from Yager is his ability to find a spot, find space between the dots, and do so on the rush, actually. He's actually got a wicked release. I mean, he takes about that much room, and I'm not kidding, and just snaps it, and he gets full wood to it. I know sticks aren't wood anymore, yada, yada, yada. He gets, full authority behind the shot with that much room. That bodes well. Being able to shoot from between the dots in the crowded areas, having a quick release, and having some mustard on that shot. I've also been watching some Yager highlights. I can't say I've sat down to watch a full WHL game. If his team advances to the Memorial Cup, I will absolutely make the trip to Michigan. Is it Grand Rapids where they are? Is the Memorial Cup this year? I will absolutely make that trip to put my eyes directly on him because I do that for y'all, yins. Like I did for Koivunen and Tristan Bros and Blomqvist. And I want to see, but what I'm seeing, at least on video, a lot to like about Brayden Yager. And 6 months ago, even 3 months ago, I would have told you, probably not. He doesn't make the NHL roster next year. I'm starting to wonder. I really am starting to wonder because he knows how to play defense as well. I didn't see a man's body last summer. I kind of saw a kid, 18-year-old kid. In that year, I mean, when I get a look at him next month, or I guess 6 weeks in July, we'll see if he's got the muscle or the physical stature to play against men, the big boys in the NHL. But I am far more bullish on his immediate future than I was a few months ago, because he's doing those things that an NHL player would do. He's clearly thinking the game, and he's scoring goals by the net. He pulled a little bit of a Crosby, his goal recently. Kind of pulled a Crosby. He snuck around the backside of the net. Rebound pops loose, and he just jumped on it. The defenseman didn't see him coming, and there he is scoring a goal from 3 feet away. Those are the things you want to see. So I'm not saying go buy your Brayden Yager jersey just yet, but I'm saying there's a realistic chance now that you'll see him in the NHL next season. Not great chance, realistic. I'd put it, maybe let's call it 1 in 4. How's that? All right. I see a bunch of you guys. Patrick, Brian, you can't say thanks, Dan. You have to say thanks, Dan. Come on. Get the vernacular right. Let's see here. Did someone say Anthony Angelo when he played straight lines and hit on the forecheck? He was useful. Yeah, he was fine. Okay. Outside of Sam Poulin, who do I think in free agency could be a good Jeff Carter replacement? You know what? I think I punted this question last week too. I haven't started my bottom 6 evaluations yet, and that's in large part because I want to see who they re-sign over the next couple of weeks. A lot of teams, those guys, those bottom 6 guys, right? They don't get to sign 4-year contracts a year in advance. This is the time that those guys start re-upping. I don't know what the field is going to look like of potentials and availables. The reality in this situation really is Jeff Carter isn't going to be impossible to replace. Somebody who can take some face-offs would be nice. Somebody who can kill penalties, And those guys, a dime a dozen is not the right expression, although that's my first instinct to say that. But you can get one of those guys for $750 or $1 million on the free agent market, ask them to score 10 goals and be okay. I still think we're going to start to hear rumblings of the Penguins chasing a big name. I think they have to. They cannot. Kyle Dubas cannot expect different results by doing the same thing. He can't trot the same team back and expect different results. I also think, by the way, Sam Poulin is going to have an uphill battle to make the team. I want to tell you he is ready. I want to tell you that he was held back by a packed lineup. I want to tell you all the good things. I don't think I can. He was playing wing again in Wilkes-Barre. I just don't see his skating translating to the NHL level. And that's, and I hate to criticize the guy. I mean, the guy's overcome so much and he's still hanging around and banging around. And he has, if he can find a way to get an extra half step, absolutely, he's a solid NHL player because he's smart. He's defensively aware, responsible, physical. That half step is a killer. Okay. Let's see here. Norvell says, would a Ryan Graves trade to Utah be possible? I heard they have no defense under contract. Well, sure, Norville, anything is possible. But let's be honest here. The reason you want to trade him would be the reason they don't want to trade for him. Just the way it goes, yeah? Okay, let's see here. A Jarry trade to LA, no goaltending under contract. Sure, it's in theory possible. What do the Penguins do at that point? I mean, listen, if the Penguins were willing to give away Tristan Jarry, I would imagine teams like LA, like Edmonton's scrambling for goaltending, Stuart Skinner, finally the bottom dropped out. But what are the Penguins going to do at that point? You all really undersell Tristan Jarry. He had a bad few weeks, no question. His save percentage fell from like 917 to 903. He had a terrible few weeks there from like the last few days of February through the middle of March when Alex Nedeljkovic took over. He was brutal. No two ways about it. The team was brutal in front of him. He got zero help. That's when he was getting lit up by Washington and Edmonton and who else just stomped on them. You get my point. You take out that chunk of the season. You set aside those 2 or 3 weeks. And Tristan Jarry was having a very good year. Very good year. So, maybe you're willing to ride with Alex Nedeljkovic as the starting goalie. I don't think so. I mean, Alex Nedeljkovic has a lot to prove. I mean, he is a benefit to the team. I would happily, if I'm a GM, and I'm not, I would sign him to be the 1A with Tristan Jarry. I don't think Joel Blomqvist is ready. Certainly not one I saw at the end of the season up in Wilkes-Barre. He's got a few more wrinkles to iron out. So, but if you trade Jarry, you're riding with Nedeljkovic, who was giving up 3 and 4 goals a game, and Joel Blomqvist, who might not be ready for the big show. Or you're signing a guy like Cam Talbot, whom the goalie-starved LA Kings are willing to let go. Think about that for a minute. Just put that sort of juxtaposition. Always have to kind of then spin the board around, look at it from the other side of it. I don't know. I think in a year, all of you, let's trade Jarry, folks. I think next summer will be your time. I think by then Yoel Blomqvist will be absolutely ready and kicking at the door with full throat or full might. Not right now. Hey, Cal says my first live chat. Hi, Dan. Love PHN. Thanks, Cal. I've been wanting more size and physicality. I'd love Zadorov. Any guesses on his cost to sign? There is a site, AFP Analytics. Go to that, and they've done, I think, a pretty good job. I thought they maybe undervalued some players. I thought maybe some of their contracts were a little bit light, or their contract projections were. In fact, here, I will do that for you. If I can type, I'm reaching out here, analytics. Okay, there we go. Contract projections. All right. Let me find Zadorov here. No, he's not on here yet. Okay, so they haven't done him yet. I don't know. I mean, defensemen like that seem to be signing for the $4 and the $5 million, don't they? I don't know. I hear a lot of. He is a mixed bag kind of guy. You hear some people praise his physicality, and other people just groan and roll their eyes at his defensive ability. The Penguins are not going to sign a guy who doesn't play his position well. They're not going to get that one-dimensional player just to add physicality. So that might be a no-go unless he comes at a real bargain for them. Michael asks, has Bunting become a fan favorite like he was in Toronto? Not yet, Michael. I think he's on his way. I didn't get a chance to actually meet him until the final, 10 days of the regular season. Every time I wanted to go, have a little chat with him or meet him, there'd be somebody else beat me to it, basically, asking, some off the record or whatever sort of questions. And that's not my style to go horn in on another reporter's work. So I would just, okay, I'll go talk to somebody else. I finally got to go, talk to Mike. He was cool. We talked some hockey, and I see him definitely becoming a fan favorite because he has that gritty, natty, net front sort of presence. And the Penguins certainly need it. I don't think he'll quite become beloved as Hornquist, but yeah, you never know. Aiden Jansen. Do you think they should go after a big top-line winger, whether it's through trade or free agency? Aiden, I'm on record, and I can't back off of it now. I would absolutely go after a top six forward. Wait for it. Who can play center. I think this would be the year to slide Evgeny Malkin to the wing, take some burden off of him. Chandler Stevenson is probably the one guy that I definitely would jump after. AFP Analytics has him at signing for he's 30. They have him at a 5-year, $5.5 million contract. Take that in a heartbeat. And, he can play the wing beside Malkin. Malkin can play the wing beside him. And away you go. I think Matt Duchene would be the other guy that I would absolutely kind of lay in wait for. He's going to AFP projected him to be in that 6.3 million range going forward. The nice thing about signing a guy like Duchene, who is 34, going to be 34. I do this off the top, off my cuff. So if I make a slight mistake, forgive me. You're only going to sign him for 3 years. So there isn't that long-term commitment. And make no mistake, that's why Jake Gensel is no longer a Penguin, because they had to sign him for a long commitment. And that's just not where this team is with a free agent who isn't, down the middle or a bedrock top 4 defenseman. So I like Duchene and I like Chandler Stevenson, because you can always have a center like Chandler Stevenson. Keep Letang and EK, trade Smith and Raquel. All right, Sixburg. I think there's a lot of support for that movement, certainly. I do think Riley Smith is, if I had to bet, yeah, I think Riley Smith would be a 50-50, if not 60-40 shot to be traded this summer. Okay, let's see here. According to Twitter and message board, GM Sam Pullen is the next coming, and only reason he isn't in the NHL is because Mike Sullivan hates young players. Yep. Listen, yeah, Brian, I think you must be a fan of PHN, or at least stop by these chats often enough to know how exasperated, blue in the face, irritated, annoyed I get with that assertion that somehow Mike Sullivan is sitting in the back room drinking the blood of 18-year-old players, saying, ha, 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 they'll never make the NHL as long as I'm around. It's silly. A bunch of young players made the NHL when Mike Sullivan was new with the Penguins because those players were good. Brian Rust, Connor Sherry, Tom Kuhnackel, even Scott Wilson. There's one or two more that I'm forgetting. But they earned their way in the NHL, even in other places. The guys now didn't earn their way. I mean, listen, Daniel Sprong was a disaster with the Penguins. And more to the point, he's about to join his 6th team in 6 years this summer. Think about that. For all the people who pine for him that he wasn't given a chance, 5 other teams have given him a chance in 5 years. Alex Nylander had an amazing 23 games with the Columbus Blue Jackets. He had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity with Buffalo, Chicago, the Penguins, so on and so forth. So there's my slight rant. All right, let's see here. 6 years isn't enough. He's not. Bahram Panani. I'm sorry, I can't. Oh, yeah, Panahi. I don't know who you're talking about there. Sorry. Okay, let's see here. Business is business, but the Pens are the Pens an attractive spot for top free agents? No, I would say absolutely not. If a player has a choice to sign, let's say, a team that is on the cusp of the playoffs versus a team that is fighting to get back there before they get blown up, where are you going to sign? Okay, maybe you can all still hear me. I think so. My video will be back in a second. I hope so anyway. Let's see here. Man, 635 live views. That's insane. Wonder why my camera isn't coming up. Okay, we'll just do this audio style for the last couple of minutes here. Let's see here. Sixberg says, all those guys I mentioned were players Sullivan coached in the AHL, so he was comfortable with them. Sixberg, that's just an incorrect narrative. Yes, he was comfortable with those guys. However, they were good. They were good players. Brian Rust didn't become a good player because Mike Sullivan gave him a chance. He forced Mike Sullivan to give him a chance, and that's how it's supposed to work. All right. Let's see here. Oh, that guy, Ray Manzarek, Podcast 101, the microphone should not hide the face. Have you ever seen my face? Okay, so there we are. Everyone can hear me. I've done an hour. I promised somebody I was going to meet them for lunch and only do 45 minutes. But, so here's your last shot for questions. All right? Last call for alcohol. That's odd. Why can't get my video back? Well, anyway. Yeah, Jay Cawthorn rooting for Rick Tocchet to win the Cup. I am too. I mean, let's be honest. Tocchet is coaching a whale of a series up there. What are my overall thoughts on goaltending in the league? Well, it just seems, yeah, I mean, here are my two thoughts on that, sports fan, and I think we're going to end on this one. The way the position is played, it reminds me of the evolution of gymnastics and what they force the gymnasts to put their body through in order to compete for a very small amount of time. That's these guys, these poor goalies are, I don't think they're the same by 30, 35. This is why they can't play 65 games in a year. It's because of the techniques now. Down on the knees, up, bounce around, push side to side, the reverse RVH, the RVH. It's the human body is not meant to do the things that we're teaching goalies to do. It's why their hips are shot. That's why their knees are gone by 35. You're not going to see goalies play to 40 anymore. Just so, and I also don't necessarily think it's as effective. I think we've built and built and built on, we're building on incorrect principles at this point. Stopping one puck becomes, more important, and it's kind of taken a wrong turn in Albuquerque. All right, kids, that's it for me. I appreciate y'all. Since you can't see me, let me try one thing. Let me try. Nope, can't do that. Nope, that's not working either. Anyway, you can hear me, so I will wave figuratively to y'all and appreciate you. We will do this again next Wednesday at noon. Have fun.